So everyone, welcome to Super Jam Podcast. Today we've got the pleasure of Black Bordello with us in the podcast room in Wandsworth, and we've got Sienna. How you doing, Sienna?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome here as well. We got Daniel as well. How you doing?
Yeah, great.
Great.
Fun.
And we've got our student team helping out as well. We've got Victor. How you doing, Victor?
Fine, thank you.
Great to have you here. And we've got Ryan as well. How you doing, Ryan?
Not too bad.
Amazing. So today we're going to have a deep dive into your guys' music and kind of shows and all the stuff to do with the band. So for our listeners, we're going to have a clip of Asin Mary, which is from their most recent album, White Bardo, but there is some new stuff on the way. So check this out now, and then we'll get jumped straight into the interview. So I hope you enjoyed that clip of Asin Mary, everyone. And we're going to come to some questions on that song and other songs off the album in a minute. But guys, I thought I'd start by asking you a couple of our classic questions we ask all our interview guests, all right? So one of the things I want to ask is, what's the biggest misconception about being in a band or being a musical artist? You know, you meet someone at a party and tell them, what's the biggest misconceptions you get?
Well, I was very sure that I wanted to be a musician from a very young age. And I think I thought it would be all this kind of glamour. And that's definitely true for if you're, you know, if you get instantly signed and go to the top. I think a lot of people, even the big shot industry plant types, they do have a moment where you have to start out, and for the majority of musicians, it's actually a long time of doing the grind before you get to the moment where you have people packing your bags and driving you here and driving you there. A lot of doing music is carrying stuff, actually. And so you've got to get good arm strength. People are always like I'm quite small. People are like, wow, you're really strong. And I'm like, yeah, it's because I carry like 7 kilos on each side, like my guitar and then my pedals.
Yeah,
so,
and the load out and loading in and loading out takes a lot longer than you would think. Yeah, it's the illusion of roadies is not necessarily the way it is. Everyone obviously got to carry their own weight type thing, and it's a everyone's got to put in a lot of individual effort to make a band show work well, you know.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're talking about this side of things, because at all our Super Jam shows, I'm always chatting to students and like, no one tells you about how much lifting you have to do and carrying stuff around when you're in a band. So it's good to make that public at last, guys, for sure. Yeah. So speaking of gigs, or maybe it was at a gig or a studio, I don't know about it. Do you have any funniest moments where it was like a fail or something went really wrong, and looking back on it you can laugh now, but do you have any moments like that you can think of?
Yes, absolutely. I think me and Daniel are probably thinking of the same time.
There are two sort of answers I can think of with that. So there was one where Sienna's car broke down, which is probably the...
Oh yeah, so we were on our way to play Festival in Dorset, or Camp Festival, I don't really know what the name is, but yeah, we were playing there, and we were on our way, we were down the motorway, and then my clutch broke, and it was like actually a really scary thing, but strangely in scary situations I'm quite calm. So yeah, I managed to get off the motorway with no clutch and just edge out. And then I soft crashed the car into a blackberry bush because I couldn't stop it. So I was like, blackberry bush looks soft. And then so I get out, and then we were on the side of the road for 3 hours until the RAC person came, and they were like, yeah, you don't have a car. And I was like, what? Can you not just fix it? And he was like, nah, this isn't an easy fix. And I was like, why does it happen? And they were like, just random clutch collapse. I was like, oh, cool, that can happen with cars. Didn't know that. So we ended up, then they sort of left us in the middle of nowhere in a car park, somewhere near Southampton. And I started crying. And then our guitarist, Jerome, who, if you don't know him, he looks like Edward Scissorhands. He went into this...
He is Edward Scissorhands. So he's got picks instead of scissors.
Yeah, he goes in with his...
Yeah.
And he found this hotel that was right next to the car park, but it was like this kind of spooky hotel. And he goes in and he's like, do you have room at the inn? And they're like, who the hell is this man coming into this Edward Scissorhands guy coming into our... But anyway, they let us have this room. But we all had to like share a kind of like really small room, and like luckily we had tents and sleeping bags and stuff, and we all slept on the floor, and it was a very bizarre place. And they
Ellington Lodge.
Shout out
Ellington Lodge.
Well, we actually we were very happy to be at Ellington Lodge in the end, because they were really lovely to us. They were different before they found out that we were musicians. They were like, who are you and why are you here? And why are you all in one room? And why? And then when they realised that we were musicians, their attitude completely changed. They were like, oh, we do festivals here. You should come and play next year. I was like, okay.
Maybe there's another misconception about being a musician. You know, you think that kind of nobody's gonna like people oddly do give you quite a lot of respect when they find out you're a musician, whether or not they know your music, because they sort of assume there's this like mystique to it, which is quite funny.
I think in society we've come to be really suspicious of people if they're in weird places at weird times. But being a touring musician, you often are in weird places at weird times. Like you're on a ferry in the Netherlands at 6 a.m. You're on you're in a service station at 9 p.m. You know, it's like in other situations, you might need a hotel, like spur of the moment. And in other situations, people are like, why is this assortment of people here right now? Like, what are you doing here? And then when they find out you're a musician, they're like, oh, okay. So it's always good to let people know that, you know, you're not just loitering.
Yeah, so they don't think that you're up to no good. You know, if you tell them you're up to some musical business, they normally allow it.
That is amazing. And I must say, Soft Crashed into the Blackberry Bush sounds like a song title to me, for sure.
Maybe it should be.
Maybe.
I was so hungry, I just started eating them for 3 hours.
I think it's more of a verse lyric, but Soft Crashed.
Yeah, I could imagine it. It was quite poetic.
Soft Crashed into the Blackberry Bush.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, but what I'm going to say is, if you got a crash, you might as well make juice out of it, I guess.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Gotta have
juice.
Gotta have stuff on the side of the road to consume, you know.
Yeah, for sure. That's absolutely an amazing story, and thanks for sharing it. And it's good to have like a takeaway from it as well for people listening as well. Now, at the start of the podcast, we had a listen to the clip of Asin Mary, and I thought it'd be fun to have a little chat about that song, if that's cool for you guys. And I kind of think that song's got quite a spooky feel to it, and it carries across the whole album, White Bardo. And I was wondering, where does the inspiration from this kind of almost spooky, kind of darker sound come from?
Good question. So I guess I've always been into gothic themes, and I loved, when I was a kid, I wasn't, into kind of fairies and princesses and happily ever after. I was always more interested in the villains and the creeps, the weirdos. I was a weirdo. I'm still a weirdo. So yeah, I guess I have always been interested in the sort of the darker side of things, and it's kind of, my mum is also a metalhead, and she raised me on all of that stuff. She used to take me to festivals when I was a kid, and I'd be there with my little earmuffs on. but yeah, so I am, you know, I have lots of different emotions, a lot of which are kind of darker, and that leads me towards exploring my fantasies and my dreams when it comes to a sort of, you know, in a dark way. And that's why I got really interested in the idea of sirens. So Acid Mary is about sirens, basically. It's influenced by sort of Greek myth, but it's also just kind of the story of a mermaid, a mermaid in disguise who eats a man alive. And that's that's the short synopsis of the story of the song. And I kind of take moments in my life and experiences I have in the sort of mundane reality, and I kind of translate it to things that can be more fantastical in a dark, exciting way.
Amazing.
Absolutely. I've got very little to add to that. I feel like just covered all the bases, but I suppose there's also a sense in which that spooky side of it is something that we all grew up with as well. Because on the one side you might have Toy Story, but on the other side you got Tim Burton, and you know, they're both great, obviously. But I think stuff like, funnily enough, Edward Scissorhands or The Nightmare Before Christmas, Beetlejuice. These things very much inform the sort of spookier side of the world. It's very sort of Halloweenish type, you know. And there's also that famous thing about Halloween wherein you put on a costume, you can kind of be anyone on Halloween, and that sort of is almost the distraction from what Sienna described as the mundane reality. It's escapism through understanding another world.
There was a quote from Buffy that I was watching the other day where someone said, "Halloween is come as you aren't." Yeah. But it's funny because I don't feel like I'm pretending when I dress up in silly clothes on stage, or you know, in the case of Acid Mary, I pretend to be a mermaid, a man-eating mermaid. I don't really feel like I am pretending, which says a lot about me.
Well, but also because you're embodying that theme of the song that you were going for, and then that feels a lot less like pretense often than living your daily life, where we all, you know, put on this mask and we don't really, we're not always aware of it. But
yeah, for sure. And it's amazing exploring these like themes and ideas. And I was wondering, Daniel, because you're on drums, right? How do you approach that as a drummer fitting into that sort of sonic world?
Well, when I joined the band, there were so many incredible songs already there that they had released for their first album, and I was like blown away by all the material, and I learned it all very diligently so that I could turn up to the first session and be like, all right, I know all of this now. So in a way, that was for the old stuff. Now, Acid Mary is a song that we came up with well after that, so I did, you know, make the part entirely my own. And a lot of the influences that seeped into that drum part were, you know, it's funny, we said "Come As You Aren't," like stuff like what Dave Grohl plays on Nevermind. It's supposed to be very thunderous, and it's, you know, again, I think about this with instrumentation across the board in a song. You're looking to combine with the theme. So if your theme is a siren eating a man alive, then there's obviously going to be a lot of cataclysmic noise and struggle and like bashing. So, you know, I was just kind of smashing them in the thing. Sienna also did have a reference track, I remember, in the recording that she pulled up, which was Sonic Youth Bull in the Heather. Oh, yeah. Because it's got this really cool tom in the middle of the groove randomly. It's like dun dun da boom da da boom, and it's like throwing a bit of toms in there is often something that people don't do as much with a groove, and they just rely on this classic hi-hat snare kick. But sometimes you throw a few toms in there and you get a bit more cataclysm to it.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. And you mentioned Sonic Youth, and I know Victor was wanting to know a little bit more about the inspiration. So Victor, do you want to ask a bit about that?
I actually had a question. I want to be a musician when I'm older, and I clearly have artists that have inspired me. And I wanted to know if you lot had maybe like a big three that really made you lot want to go into music.
Definitely, I do. But Sienna's one's.
You go.
I mean, my big three, are more for my sort of singer-songwriter stuff. But it's I would definitely say Kurt Cobain, and I would definitely say Elliott Smith. Which Elliott Smith doesn't really seep into this music as much because this music is a bit louder and a bit like more in your face. But and then I would say maybe Tom Waits, because he's got some great piano stuff. What would you say, C?
Well, so I have so many different musical influences across the board, and especially now they keep changing. But if I were to go with my core musical influences, that when I was a kid, I watched these people or I listened to these people, and I was like, right, I want to be a musician. That's the life I want. Obviously, David Bowie was massive for me. I would say him being an influence is an understatement. It was more like a religion, and it still is. So, and it was just the characters, everything, the way that the stories weave together, and the way that the songs change, the way that he changes, the way that the music takes influence from everything around him. So that's a massive influence. I was also a really big fan of System of a Down when I was a kid. And stuff, I know you said three, but I like Kate Bush, PJ Harvey. I could go on. There's so many.
That's cheating. You guys see that? She cheated.
It is hard to have a big three. I feel like that could be a whole podcast just based around that question.
Oh yeah.
But we do have some other questions for you. So we're going to ask a bit about the we've talked about inspirations, and I know Ryan, you want to know a bit more about the genre as well. So do you want to have a jump in with your question about that?
One of the main questions I wanted to ask was what got you guys invested in that genre, and what made you guys think that genre is for me? Because not many people know the answer to that question until they go experience it for themselves. That was the same with me when I was doing country. I didn't know if it was for me, and then I heard a bit of country and I was like, yeah, that's me.
You love the country. I love country as well, actually. Country is so honest. I think, it isn't, for me, it's not a brain question, it's a heart question, right? So, I think a lot of artists do go into music for different reasons. Some people, they have a packaged idea of what they want to do, and they go in and they say, right, I'm going to be this kind of artist, these are my influences, and I'm going to make music with concepts and aesthetics that match that. For me, honestly, genre is the last thing I think about, and that's why a lot of people describe our music in particular as genre-defying, because I think we're moving into a time where genre is less and less important. It's about, so many big artists that we see completely mesh different genres together. And, but it's a really good question, because I remember when I was, about 10 years ago, when I was thinking, oh, I want to go into music. I wonder what I want to do, I wonder what kind of musician I'm going to be. It was a really big question for me. And actually, I think I would have loved to hear the advice that it's really not that important, because what is important is what makes you excited musically. And for me, I'm really into jazz. I'm really into metal. I'm really into goth music, dark music, but then I really like country music. I like soul. I love Elvis Presley. I like, some pop music. I like ABBA. I like ABBA, right? I know some people don't want to admit that, but
I love ABBA.
But yeah, so I think the thing that makes you is all of those things meshing together, and So for musicians starting out, I would say, don't try and put yourself into a box too soon, because you are the box. Like, you make your own box, and you don't fit into anyone else's. And, you know, if you like country music, you might be that artist. I mean, there's quite a few artists we know of, like, for instance, Fat White Family. They started out they kind of did a weird mashup of country and, like, punk, avant-garde stuff.
Garage rock, you know?
Yeah, so some people take the starting point of this thing that they love and they turn it into something completely different, and that tends to work a lot, but just knowing what you love is a really good start.
Yeah, amazing answer, and like great encouragement for people out there as well. And it's quite often how new genres are born through this melting pot of ideas. And like you said, getting to the core of it, that self-expression is what's maybe the most, or definitely the most important thing as well. Now, speaking of your music, it meshes so well with like the aesthetic and imagery you've built up as well. So I was going to ask how, you know, it's got a spooky and kind of edgy feel to it with like an element of like glamour and danger, and I was wondering, how did you piece together that visual and sonic world so everything matches so well? Because that's not easy to do, and I think there's a lot of young artists out there who would love to find out a bit about how one goes about doing that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the visual has always been, again, another thing that kind of just fits into the jigsaw puzzle of the song. So I think I studied art, and I've been painting and, you know, drawing and stuff all my life. That kind of goes along with the music. It sort of fits in, and when I write a song, I see a scene that it fits into. I see a world around it. And I'm neurodivergent, so I don't know if that has something to do with it. You know, sometimes I can smell sound. Sometimes, you know, my senses get mixed up. So maybe that is another part of why I see certain, you know, images attached to the sounds and attached to the concepts behind the music. Yeah, so I guess I do all the artwork for the album covers, and then when it comes to music videos, there's always a clear story behind the song. So I will normally get together a team and we all kind of brainstorm ideas, and then we'll just go with that. We'll go as crazy as we need to with the idea as within our means. And that's why they end up looking very kind of fantastical, because that's how I'm like trying to do everything that my imagination tells me to do.
It's almost like that's how they're dreamed up. And I use the word dreamed because there's other influences, obviously, that seep into the visual side of it. People like David Lynch and Stanley Kubrick, who loved to put, you know, dream sequences in, or use that dream world as a basis to create something really imaginative. And I think that's, for example, on Garden of Earthly Delights, I think that's definitely all over the place. The shifting, the sense of constant time and place shifting, and the psychedelia of it does in some way come from, you know, dreams, from what we see at night.